After the first week of the XFL, everyone was all excited about the opening weekend attendance, the opening weekend television ratings, headlines everywhere. The XFL's here to stay. Millions of people are watching. These games are phenomenal. You turned on national radio or TV, Fox, ESPN, all of the talking heads were spouting off about how exciting this new football league is. How the XFL had a real chance at survival. But if you listen to this podcast, you heard the truth. I came on here after week one of the XFL and told you that the opening weekend television ratings were not that great. And the attendance at these games was embarrassingly low. I told you there was a real problem in this league with quarterback play. And there was no solution. I told you the ratings would drop in week 2 and continue to drop throughout the season, and that eventually the media and the television networks would turn its back on this league. Ratings and attendance have continued to drop, and I'll still hold on to my prediction that the mainstream sports media will eventually turn on the XFL. Week 1, XFL games averaged about 3.1 million viewers. Not bad. Not what I would call great. The first iteration of the XFL almost 20 years ago saw over 50 million tune in. But opening weekend ratings weren't that bad. I mean, the 3.1 million viewers that tuned in to watch the XFL is more people that watch Vince McMahon's wrestling programs on Monday and Friday nights. So it's not what I would call success, but I also wouldn't call it failure. Week 2 of the XFL, they lost damn near half their audience. Lost 1 million viewers as only 2.1 million tuned in to watch bad football. In week 3, XFL viewership was down to 1.61 million. That number would be fine for FS1, but ABC, ESPN, Fox, they're not going to tolerate that type of low viewership on network television. Here's the thing that people aren't pointing out. The XFL has gone pretty much unopposed in the month of February. Before the league began, I told you that the XFL had about 3 to 4 weeks to catch on. Because once March came around, they'd struggle to compete with March Madness in the end of the NBA regular season. Unopposed, they've lost damn near half their audience. What the fuck you think is going to happen over these next 4 or 5 weeks? It wouldn't surprise me if the audience for the XFL drops below 1 million in the month of March. The XFL has got a lot of problems. One being, there just isn't much interest or demand in a secondary football league. I don't care how much the national media tries to sell this league like it's popular. It's just not. No one cares. Secondly, the football is bad because the quarterback play is bad. XFL teams average 216.1 passing yards a game through 3 weeks. That would rank 22nd in the NFL. It's the NFL equivalent to guys like Joe Flacco, Jacoby Brissett, Mason Rudolph. Except those guys are actually throwing and competing against NFL defenses. Without great quarterback play, a football league cannot survive. Who are the biggest stars in the NFL? The quarterbacks. If NFL quarterback play was dreadful, the league would suffer. Fortunately for the NFL, they're getting a fresh crop of the best quarterbacks in the country every offseason. There are 32 teams in the NFL. And half of them, seemingly every other year, are looking for a starting quarterback, looking for a franchise quarterback. Outside of New Orleans, Kansas City, the Rams, Atlanta, Seattle, Green Bay, Philadelphia, Houston, maybe San Francisco, the rest of the teams in the league in Pittsburgh, the rest of the teams in the league don't have a long-term quarterback in place. Baker Mayfield is the starter right now in Cleveland. But if he has another bad year next year, like he did last year, then the Browns will once again be looking for another franchise quarterback in 2021. But for the XFL, the quarterback problem is one that has no solution. If NFL teams struggle finding a franchise quarterback, then how do you expect a secondary football league to find great quarterbacks? The answer is simple. They won't. The only somewhat decent quarterback in the league is PJ Walker. And he couldn't beat out Jacoby Brissett for the starting job in Indy last offseason. He completed only 57% of his passes in college at Temple, playing against shitty AAC defenses. Long story short, my opinion and prediction for the XFL has not changed. If anything, it's only been strengthened. The networks will eventually turn on this league. Vince McMahon might secure some type of TV deal for season 2 on small cable networks like FS1, FS2. But eventually, the XFL will once again cease to exist. All right, the Dak Prescott situation in Dallas continues to roll on. Both sides seemingly want to come to an agreement on a long-term contract, but as of right now, it seems to me that they're headed towards the direction of a franchise tag. Jerry Jones offered Dak Prescott a contract back in September worth $33 million a year, a contract that Dak obviously declined. I don't know if he declined because it wasn't enough guaranteed money or if he thought he were worth more than that on an annual basis. The contract reportedly guaranteed $100 million. Dak Prescott made a big mistake by not jumping at the opportunity to sign that contract. If I'm the Dallas Cowboys, I'm going after Tom Brady for $25 million for the next 2 years, re-signing Amari Cooper, and moving on from Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott is an era that's been filled with empty promises and broken dreams. I don't know who's in Dak's ear, whether it's his agent or his homies, but he has overvalued himself. He isn't worth $33 million a year. The fucking offer the Cowboys gave him in September. That contract would have overpaid him. Here are the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL by annual salary. Number 1, Russell Wilson, $35 million. 2, Big Ben, $34 million. Tied at 3 are Jared Goff and Aaron Rodgers, $33.5 million. Number 5, Carson Wentz, $32 million. Now you tell me, is Dak Prescott better or equal to any of those 5 guys? The answer is no. Dak is fool's gold. Cowboys lovers will point to the fact that he threw for nearly 5,000 yards last season, but the majority of those yards were gained because Dallas was consistently playing from behind. Dak Prescott looked great against the Giants, the Redskins, and the Dolphins to open the season. What happened when he had to travel to New Orleans in week 4 and play a real defense? He threw for 223 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. The high-powered Cowboys offense scored 10 points. Following week against Green Bay, Dak throws for 463 yards. Great game against a pretty good defense, right? Wrong. Cowboys were down 17-0 at halftime, 31-10 going into the fourth quarter. Once the Packers defense let up, went into prevent with a 21-point lead, only then did Dak lead the Cowboys down the field for 2 touchdown drives. Season on the line in Philadelphia, week 16. All Dak needs to do is lead the Cowboys into Philly and win. Cowboys win the NFC East, secure a home playoff game. All they need to do is win against a banged-up Eagles team with practice squad players. In that game, Dak only completes 57% of his passes, 0 touchdowns, quarterback rating of 74.5. The Cowboys in this high-octane offense score 9 points. With the season on the line, 9 points. This is the guy you want as your franchise quarterback? You want to pay this guy Russell Wilson money? When the game is on the line, your season's on the line, Russell Wilson time and time again has proven he can lead his team to victory. Dak Prescott shrinks in those situations. Against playoff teams last season, Dak and the Cowboys were 1-6. They were 7-2 against the bad teams in the league. Jerry Jones needs to walk away from Dak Prescott. His time to bring another Super Bowl to Dallas in his lifetime is coming to an end. Go after Tom Brady. Get a guy who is proven. If he signs Dak Prescott to a long-term big money contract, Jerry Jones can kiss his Super Bowl dreams goodbye. All right, let's switch gears to the NBA. The NBA is a unique league compared to other professional sports. In the NFL, a team like the Saints can go 3-13 like they did in 2005, bounce back the next season, and be considered an elite team, all in one offseason. In the NFL, as long as you have an elite quarterback, you're considered a threat. Being great in the regular season can mean something in the NFL, even if you get bounced in the wild card round of the playoffs. Or even a team like the Cleveland Browns back in 2018. Baker Mayfield steps in midway through the year. They closed the last half of the season 5-3. Didn't make the playoffs, but the 2018 season was considered a success for the Cleveland Browns. It's not like that in the NBA. Being great during the regular season means nothing. Take a team like the New Orleans Pelicans. They went through a 13-game losing streak earlier this season. They bounced back with the emergence of Zion Williamson, threatening to take the number 8 seed from Memphis. But if they don't take that 8 seed, if they don't make the playoffs, this season in New Orleans will be considered a failure, even though they've been great since late December. The Milwaukee Bucks are standing at a crossroads right now. This is the most important season in the history of that franchise because if they don't make it to the NBA Finals this year, Giannis is gone. Giannis has been in Milwaukee since 2013. In that time, they've been to the playoffs 4 times. First round exits in 3 of those 4 playoff trips. Last season, they build a 2-0 lead over Toronto in the Eastern Conference Finals. Series moves to Toronto. Bucks don't win another game. Epic 4-game collapse. Milwaukee right now is having one of the best regular seasons in the history of the NBA. They're 51-8. They clinched a playoff berth in fucking January with 3 months left in the regular season. Their 12.8 point differential per 100 possessions is the best in NBA history. They have the best defense in the league. They've scored 70 points before halftime 16 times this year. They just beat a damn good Oklahoma City team Friday night by 47 points. Yet no one cares. The Bucks are still not a respected team. When we talk about the best teams in the NBA, we talk about LeBron James and the Lakers. We talk about Paul George, Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers. Why do we look over Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks? Because they haven't accomplished anything in the playoffs. In the NBA, teams, coaches, superstar players are measured by success in the playoffs. In 2019, Giannis and the Bucks had an easy ride to the Eastern Conference Finals. Played an injury-riddled Detroit Pistons team in the first round. Second round, they play a Celtics team that was struggling with their identity and had a split locker room because of Kyrie Irving. Once Milwaukee was faced with real competition, a team that played real defense, a team that had a guy in Kawhi Leonard that could stop Giannis, they lost 4 straight games. Another reason the Bucks get looked over is because they don't have a second superstar on this roster. I know that Chris Middleton is an all-star. He's having a career year. Career highs in points, rebounds, 3-point shooting percentage. But he's not a superstar. He's not a true number 2. He's not a Anthony Davis. He's not a Paul George, CJ McCollum, or even a guy like Brandon Ingram. Just how disrespected the Milwaukee Bucks, and Giannis in particular, are in NBA circles was shown this week in an interview that Rachel Nichols did with James Harden. In most cases, when an NBA star is being interviewed and he's asked about another player, they're usually complimentary. Zion Williamson, for example, was asked about LeBron James leading up to their game Tuesday night. Had nothing but nice things to say. LeBron was interviewed after the game about Zion. Same thing, nothing but good things. But when James Harden was asked about Giannis, the comments were far from positive. Quote, I wish I could be 7 feet, run, and just dunk. That takes no skill at all. I got to actually learn how to play basketball and how to have skill, end quote. Do you think James Harden would say that about Chris Paul, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, any other superstar in the NBA? Until Giannis and the Bucks prove themselves in the playoffs, they're not going to get the respect they feel like they deserve. That's just how it is in the NBA. Success in the regular season does not matter. The Golden State Warriors won 73 games back in the 2015-16 season. Do you know what we remember about that year? LeBron James taking the NBA title back to his hometown Cleveland Cavaliers. If the Bucks don't win the title this year, or at least make it to the NBA Finals, Giannis is gone. NBA careers are short. Every superstar player wants that ring for his legacy. If Giannis can't win it in Milwaukee, he'll go somewhere else. It's much harder to win in Milwaukee because other star players don't want to be there. Who the fuck wants to be in Milwaukee in February? Who the fuck wants to be in Milwaukee any time of year? You tell me, where would you rather be? Milwaukee or New York City? Milwaukee or Los Angeles? All right, before I get out of here, I wanted to talk about Tony Romo for a minute. Friday, Romo signed a new contract with CBS worth $17 million a year, which means the best broadcasting duo in sports, Tony Romo and Jim Nantz, will continue to call the biggest Sunday afternoon NFL games. $17 million a year is more money than Tony Romo made most years of his NFL career. It's more money than most NFL players are making now. Hell, it's more money than a lot of NBA players make. Zion Williamson won't make that kind of money until the 5th year of his contract. This contract makes Tony Romo the highest paid broadcaster in history. It'll pay him $1 million a game, which some people think is exorbitant. I think he's worth every fucking penny. Some people don't realize how important the broadcasters are to a sporting event. A few weeks ago, I was bitching on this podcast about the ESPN broadcast team that had the debut game of Zion Williamson. Instead of calling what was going on in the game, they were talking about Zion's weight, how he was overweight, amongst other subjects that really didn't fucking matter. It ruined the game for me. It is extremely rare to find an elite broadcasting team like CBS has with Tony Romo and Jim Nantz. They're the best in the business. Their chemistry's good. They make the game you're watching feel important. And when you hear them, you know you're watching a big game. They're my favorite broadcasting duo since Pat Summerall and John Madden. Those two were the best of all time, in my opinion. When I was growing up, I used to look forward to the late afternoon games because I knew that Pat Summerall and John Madden would be calling it. The broadcasters have the ability to make the event memorable. When we think of big moments in sports, they're made by the guys that are calling the game, calling the event. I used to watch the WWF when I was growing up in the 90s as a kid. I can still remember to this day Jim Ross screaming at the top of his lungs, "As God is my witness, he's broken in half," when The Undertaker threw Mick Foley off the top of the cage through a table. Tony Romo is worth every dollar of that $17 million. More importantly, I'm glad he decided to remain with CBS, didn't sign with ESPN, where he would surely be ruined by political correctness. ESPN has fallen so far the last few years. It's painful sometimes watching a game broadcast by ESPN. Monday Night Football is almost dreadful to watch because you got to listen to Booger McFarland make a fool of himself on a weekly basis. All right, that's all for today. I'll be back Tuesday to recap the weekend. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Click that notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. I appreciate those of you that have already done so. Really goes a long way in helping support the channel. Leave a comment in the section below. Let me know what you think of the podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I will see you on Tuesday.